Diana Mercer's hands were stained with gun oil, her fingernails permanently darkened from years of working with rifle mechanisms most people had never seen. At 44, she'd perfected the art of being invisible at Fort Carson's weapons depot, arriving before the young soldiers, leaving after they'd gone, speaking only when absolutely necessary. The recruits called her Granny when they thought she couldn't hear. They'd hand her their rifles like she was a coat check, making jokes about her antique rifle that she kept in a worn leather case. What they didn't know was that the rifle had more confirmed kills than their entire training battalion combined. What they didn't know was that 20 years ago, Diana Mercer had been Gunnery Sergeant Diana Reaper Mercer, one of only 3 female Marine Corps scout snipers to ever graduate the program. What they didn't know was about to be demonstrated at 2,100 yards. The weapons depot at Fort Carson sat at the edge of the Colorado training ranges, a utilitarian building that smelled of cleaning solvent and gun oil. Diana arrived each morning at 0600 before the first training detail and began her routine, inspecting returned weapons, documenting maintenance needs, ordering replacement parts for rifles that had been abused by soldiers who treated them like video game controllers. She worked alone in the back corner of the depot at a scarred wooden bench that had probably been there since the 1970s. Her own rifle lay in its case beside her toolbox, a Remington 700 in .308 Winchester that showed its age in every scratch and dent on its stock. The scope was older than most of the recruits. The bolt action was so worn that Diana could work it in complete silence, a skill she'd learned during night operations when the sound of metal on metal could mean the difference between completing a mission and coming home in a box. Lieutenant Brennan entered the depot at 0730 with his usual entourage of junior soldiers, all of them carrying the new XM 2010 rifles that had cost taxpayers $15,000 each. The rifles featured computer-assisted ballistic calculators, range-finding scopes, and enough technology to make shooting seem more like playing a video game than mastering a craft. "Morning, Granny," Brennan called out without looking in her direction. "Got 3 rifles that need cleaning. Johnson here decided to use his as a club during hand-to-hand training." Diana looked up from the rifle she was repairing, a weapon with a cracked stock that would take her most of the morning to fix properly. "Cleaning is your responsibility, Lieutenant. I handle repairs and maintenance." Brennan finally turned to face her, his expression showing the particular irritation of someone who wasn't used to being corrected by people he considered beneath his notice. "Well, consider this a repair then. They're dirty. Fix them." She met his eyes for exactly 2 seconds before returning to her work. "Yes, sir." What nobody at Fort Carson knew was that Diana had been forced out of the Marine Corps in 2003 after completing 3 classified deployments to locations that officially didn't exist. She'd achieved 47 confirmed eliminations, trained a generation of Marine Scout snipers, and earned commendations that remained locked in classified files. Then, during her 4th deployment, a male superior had made advances that she'd rejected. When she'd filed a complaint, suddenly her fitness reports changed. Her performance was questioned, and she was given a choice: retire quietly with full benefits and a non-disclosure agreement, or fight the system and lose everything. She'd chosen survival. She'd taken the deal, changed her name back to her maiden name, and found work doing the only thing she knew how to do, working with rifles. For 20 years, she'd been invisible, and she'd told herself that was enough. But watching Brennan and his squad treat weapons like toys, watching them rely on computers to do the thinking that should come from understanding wind, distance, and the 1,000 variables that separated good shooters from true marksmen, something had started to crack in her careful facade. The breaking point came on a Thursday afternoon during a qualification exercise. Brennan had been bragging for weeks about his unit's performance, about how their new equipment made them the most lethal shooting platform in Army history. Diana had been in the depot when she overheard him talking to his squad outside. "You know what the longest confirmed shot in history is?" Brennan asked his soldiers. 2,475 meters. Canadian sniper in Afghanistan, 2017. That's the gold standard, but that's with specialized equipment, perfect conditions, and extreme luck. "What's the longest shot on our range?" one of the younger soldiers asked. "The record here is 1,847 yards, set back in 1983 by some Marine whose name got redacted from the books. Probably classified mission stuff, but that was with old-school equipment. These days, with our new rifles, we could probably beat it if we had the right conditions." Diana's hands had stopped working. She knew that 1,847-yard shot. She'd made it during a training exercise 2 months before her first deployment. She'd been 24 years old, one of only 3 women in the Marine Scout sniper program, and she'd been trying to prove she belonged. That evening, Diana did something she hadn't done in 20 years. She took her rifle to the range after hours when the training grounds were empty. She set up at the 2,000-yard line, a distance considered extreme even for experienced snipers, and began calculating. Wind speed and direction, temperature and humidity, elevation and barometric pressure, all the variables that computers now handled automatically, but that she'd learned to process through experience and instinct. She didn't take the shot. She wasn't ready yet. But she began to remember what it felt like to be Gunnery Sergeant Diana Mercer instead of Granny the Armory Lady. Over the next few days, Diana found herself returning to the range after dark. She would sit in the silence, feeling the wind patterns, watching how the temperature changed as the sun set behind the mountains. She was reconnecting with skills she'd buried for 2 decades, not just the mechanical act of shooting, but the mental discipline that had made her one of the best snipers the Marine Corps had ever produced. The challenge came the following Monday. Brennan had organized a training competition for his unit, with various shooting challenges at different ranges. When he mentioned it in the depot, one of his soldiers made a joke about letting Granny show them how they did it in the old days. Brennan laughed. "Sure, why not? Let's see what you can do with that antique rifle of yours. We'll even spot you a few hundred yards since you're working with museum piece equipment." The words hung in the air. Around the depot, other soldiers had stopped to watch. This wasn't a friendly invitation. This was mockery, disguised as inclusion. Diana looked at Brennan for a long moment. Then she said something she hadn't said in 20 years. "What's the bet?" Brennan's eyebrows raised. "Excuse me. If I outshoot your unit, what do I get?" "You won't," Brennan said confidently. "But sure, let's make it interesting. If you beat our average score, I'll stop calling you Granny." "I want different terms," Diana said quietly. "If I beat your best shooter at your longest range, you treat everyone in this depot with the respect their rank and position deserves." Brennan's smile widened. "Deal. Saturday, dawn. Long-range course." That week, Diana prepared in ways that Brennan and his squad couldn't understand. While they spent their evenings at the enlisted club, talking about their upcoming victory, Diana was at the range. She wasn't practicing shooting. She didn't need to. She was reconnecting with the rifle that had been her constant companion for over 30 years. She field-stripped the weapon completely, examining every component with the attention of a surgeon. She checked the barrel for erosion, measured the headspace, tested the trigger pull weight. She hand-loaded ammunition with powder charges measured to 1/10 of a grain, bullets seated to exact depths. This wasn't just maintenance. This was ritual, preparation, meditation. On Friday evening, Sergeant Rodriguez found her in the depot long after everyone else had gone home. "You're really going through with this?" Rodriguez asked. Diana paused in her work. "For 20 years, I've let people like Brennan make me feel small. Tomorrow, I'm reminding them, and myself, that some things don't become obsolete just because they're old." Saturday morning came with clear skies and light winds, good shooting conditions. Brennan's squad had set up at the range with their expensive equipment, confident and loud. Diana arrived carrying only her rifle case, a small notebook, and a thermos of coffee. "You can use our spotting scopes if you want," Brennan offered with mock generosity. I brought my own, Diana replied, pulling out a spotting scope that looked like it belonged in a museum. The shooting began with Brennan's best soldier, Corporal Jenkins, attempting shots at progressive distances. He performed well, hitting consistently at 800 yards, making decent shots at 1,000 yards, and connecting occasionally at 1,200 yards. His final attempt at 1,500 yards missed by 3 feet. Then it was Diana's turn. She settled into position, her ancient rifle contrasting sharply with the high-tech weapons. She pulled out her weathered notebook filled with hand-drawn wind charts. "No computer assistance?" Brennan asked, amused. "Don't need it," Diana replied. She began at 800 yards, perfect center hit. At 1,000 yards, she adjusted for crosswind, another perfect hit. At 1,200 yards, dead center. The laughter had stopped. "Want to try 1,500? He asked, voice tight. "I want to try 2,100, Diana said calmly. The number hung in the air like a challenge to physics itself. 2,100 yards, over 1.25 miles, beyond the range where most military snipers even attempted shots. "That's not even realistic," Brennan protested. "The range record is 1,847 yards. You'd be attempting to beat a 40-year-old record with equipment that's older than most of us." "I know," Diana said. "I set that record in 1983. I was 24 years old, and I just graduated Scout Sniper School. My instructor said women couldn't handle the math required for long-range shooting." She chambered around with practiced efficiency. "I proved him wrong then. I'm about to prove you wrong now." The silence was absolute. Every soldier on the range had stopped moving. Diana settled into her shooting position, her body remembering the stance she'd held 1,000 times before. She opened her notebook to calculations from the past week. Wind speed at multiple points, temperature drop, Coriolis effect, bullet drop, every variable without a computer, processed through decades of experience. She adjusted her scope, controlled her breathing, felt the wind and made one final correction, then squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked. For 2.8 seconds, the bullet flew through Colorado morning. Impact echoed back. The spotter. "Perfect center hit confirmed at 2,100 yards. Diana stood, cleared her rifle, turned to Brennan. "Gunnery Sergeant Diana Mercer, Marine Corps Scout Sniper, retired. You can call me Diana or Sergeant Mercer, but never Granny again." The range was silent except for wind. Then Rodriguez started clapping. One by one, others joined. Genuine respect. Brennan approached, face flushed. "How?" 20 years of practice," Diana said quietly. 3 classified deployments, 47 confirmed eliminations. Instructors who said I couldn't, making me determined to prove them wrong. Experience doesn't become obsolete because technology exists. Computers calculate. They can't teach judgment, patience, or instinct from doing something 10,000 times. She packed her rifle. "About that bet, everyone here gets professional respect. Clear?" "Crystal clear, Sergeant Mercer." Walking to her truck, Rodriguez caught up. "Why wait so long?" Diana looked at distant mountains. "I convinced myself being invisible was safer. That hiding protected me. And now? Now I remember my father carried this rifle through Vietnam. I carried it through places I can't name. 47 people died because I was good at my job. I owe them not to pretend I was never that person." 3 weeks later, Marine Corps Historical Division called. They wanted to interview her about women in combat. They wanted to declassify her record, not mission details, but that she existed and pioneered. She accepted. The next generation deserved to know someone walked this path. The rifle still sat by her workbench. Now, young soldiers asked questions about wind reading and breath control, about shooting versus marksmanship, about making impossible shots. Diana still arrived early and left late, but no longer invisible. Sometimes on Saturday mornings, she'd take that rifle to the 2,100-yard line and make shots, reminding everyone that true skill never goes out of style. The targets never stood a chance. They never had. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and smash that like button for more powerful stories of hidden heroes who prove that skill and experience will always triumph over arrogance and technology. What would you have done in Diana's situation? Would you have stayed silent for 20 years or revealed your identity sooner? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Where are you watching from today? Let us know your country in the comments. We love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world.